The people who are from Frankfurt knows that we have a series of events which called Frankfurt Meets. So we have Frankfurt Meets Davos, we have Frankfurt Meets New York. We just had a few weeks ago Frankfurt Meets Berlin. And now we have Frankfurt Meets Lagos. Okay, so I see that from here that the room is filling. So what we are going to start now we start with the speech of Stefan Ziegler, and they can listen us already over there. And then we change also the picture upstairs, okay? So the floor is yours.
Dear Dr. Maleki, dear friends of Africa, dear friends in Africa, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by conveying you the best greetings on behalf of the City Parliament of Frankfurt and on behalf of the initiative 400 Minutes. Very special thanks go to Dr. Maleki and all the partners for organizing the first African Europe Week. You give us a great opportunity to tie bands between Africa and Europe, to network, and to gain great opportunities. In the different panels, the participants have the opportunity to talk directly to top-level experts. You can look deeply into different branches, regions, and trends in Africa. But, most important, you get first-hand information and advice for your way to Africa or to Europe. African countries and their economies are among the most increasing economies of the world. And the African continent, with its resources and the young, rapidly growing population, is strategically important. As a part of the initiative 400 Minutes, you may wonder what that means, but 400 minutes is the flight time between Lagos and Frankfurt. As a part of this initiative, I had an intensive eye on Nigeria's largest city, Lagos. I was deeply impressed how the partners of the initiatives in Lagos and Frankfurt worked on this project. It is a great chance to build a partnership in an eye-to-eye view situation. Africa has more to offer than most Europeans expect. Let's stop talking. In those times, we must act. Let us discover common projects. Let us discover new business partners, and let's make new friends, as I did with 400 Minutes. I wish you all a successful first Africa-Europe Week and many more following Africa-Europe Weeks in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, so a bit of a flexible change in schedule here. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome from my side. I'm Christiane Leibach, the chairwoman of the management board of DEG. Yeah, very warm welcome to all of you, but in particular to our friends and partners in Lagos in Nigeria. I hope you can see and hear us. We can at least see you, and I hope that we can hear you at some point later. And we think it's a great idea that we have here you with us through a video conference, because it is at our heart, in particular when I'm talking about myself and DEG, that our partners and our friends in Nigeria and all over Africa, that we have a close relationship with them and work in very, very good mood there. The topic, as said, is connecting professionals in Europe and Africa. And as already said, this is from DEG, this is our core mission, because this is our day-to-day work, to work with particular African companies, but as well German companies that are interested in Africa in a day-to-day basis on financing, on planning of investments, on advisory services. And we have been doing that for a long, long time in Africa as well, for more than 50 years, and obviously have grown a lot of friendships and have come across so many talented entrepreneurs in Africa, which we are proud of to be partners of, and together with them, and based on their knowledge and expertise, and your knowledge and expertise in Nigeria in particular, how to grow a company, how to make it successful, and in that partnership find this joint success. Still, I mean, connectivity goes to in a lot of ways, and obviously there are a lot of points that can be raised on that issue. I wanted to frame that a bit from three dimensions in a way, and that is on the one part, which is probably more interesting maybe to our German parts here. Africans know that very, very well. It's about the demographic change and the rising middle class and the opportunities that come from that. And that is something we have been following up together with our partners in Africa quite intensively over the last couple of years, and that is about what skills what role skills play in that, and how we can work together to confront the skills gap that we very often African companies as well as international investors in Africa come across. And then last but not least, since that is what we are as DEG working exclusively on with the private sector, is how we can further increase and develop the role of the private sector in the development world. Yeah, rising demographic change, I think a lot of us know the numbers, but I still feel it's still every time mind-boggling if I look at that. When you see how young the population in Africa is and how much the population is growing, the median of African people is only 20 years old, which is quite different from Germany or Europe. It's a different world in that way as well. And just to give two other examples that illustrate that quite well is that in 2050 there will be 800 million more people that look for jobs in Africa as per today. And 800 million means that is the combined population of Europe and the United States. This is obviously comes with a lot of opportunities and chances, but is very demanding and on the other side. Just to give one other example for one specific country, in the Ivory Coast, the 50% of the people are 20 years or younger, and that means the whole population will double in a generation. And I think in Nigeria, with now 400 million people, the projections are 800 million by 2050. So we are in the same spot there on that. Am I wrong? Okay, good. That puts a lot of challenges both on governments, as we all know, in particular on education, which is obviously key to any development success, but as well infrastructure, health services, and others. But as we like to see it, say at DEG, I mean, it is certainly important that people get a basic education, and more than a basic education if possible. But on the other side, it creates a lot of frustration in not only in Africa, but in our countries, and Europe has a long history of that as well. If the young people, if they are then well educated, they can't find a job, yeah? And so that creates really a lot of, as I said, frustrations and creates turmoils even in the civil society. At the same time, and I think that is really where it comes to the opportunities and chances for German companies as well, or European companies that are looking at Africa. When you look at the so-called middle class in Africa today, I think it hasn't never been larger and it has never been better off, yeah, because the economic success, which we sometimes kind of don't have focus on when it comes to a lot of African and countries like in Nigeria, is that the middle class really has been growing over the last couple of years, the last 10 years, quite substantially. And that means a lot of things. It means that there is an African consumer who is asking for a lot of products, that creates opportunities, that creates investment opportunities for companies, and market opportunities for African and Europeans. And so as I said, I mean, European companies, when they connect to Africa, then it means they connect to a market with a growing population. It means they connect to a lot of private sector companies, and it is a lot of that, not only in the more traditional industries as our countries here in Europe has been once grown, but there's a lot of new initiatives on the digital side and digital platforms as well, where we do see that the potential that is in digitalization and the great ideas that exist there really can overcome a lot of the bottlenecks that are still part of the economic structure in Africa. And I think that is probably one of the most fascinating parts, which I know by heart and have seen it a lot, when you combine this kind of really very forward-looking and very innovative technologies with really improving the life and the conditions of the people in the country, sometimes in the rural areas. And I think that's a great opportunity on that side. I just mentioned already skills, because I think skills, and when we talk to our clients, both in Africa as well as with our German clients that are looking at Africa, I think there are 2-3 things that are always mentioned, which is still difficult and challenging, and that is the business environment, it is skilled labor forces, and it is finance. Yeah? And on the skilled labor force, I think we all know from here in Europe as well how difficult it is to get IT specialists. I think all looking for them, and obviously the same is true in Africa as well. But on a more general context, I think it is really important to do, and I think that's something the private sector can play a role there as well, is really to have people with the adequate skill so that they can get employed and be successful, make an income, and add to the success of the country. Because I mean, the situation is very often, I mean, as I said, there is a lot of workforce that is looking for jobs, but it's just there's some lack of skills, be it on the academic side or be it even on hard facts, but as well as social factors which might play a role. And this skill mismatch, I think, is for a lot of African companies as well as investors an issue. And so to bridge this skills gap is, besides financing for us, one of the things we really have put high on the agenda. We have worked with the World Bank Group on a study where we have identified like 200 examples of companies where there are good examples, best practice examples, how that can be bridged. And it's not only about training, but it is as well about HR. It is about how to develop your workforce, and I think this is a very much down to earth approach, really, to work together with our partners in the African countries there. And what I think we take a lot of confidence in is that when we have, for example, set up a product to help companies to identify this skills gap and to do something about their human resources policy, how much good responses we get and how quickly companies get onto that way and really strengthen their capacity on that quite tremendously. I said already on business environment, and we know how the situation is. I mean, there's obviously lots of differences among African countries. I think Nigeria is one of the most dynamic countries in terms of doing business and a very vibrant environment there, in particular in Lagos. Other countries are obviously on a bit of different issue, but doing business is and doing business rankings is obviously very, very important, and in particular foreign investors as well, and German investors look at these rankings and ask questions about it. So I think we are all, it is very, very good to do something about that. On a policy level, I would like to mention like 2 initiatives we find very, very important. And that is, the one is the Compact with Africa, and the other one is the African Continental Free Trade Area, because they both focus on really making the business environment better for our people here, in particular the so-called Compact with Africa countries, 12 economies with roughly 300 million inhabitants. They are very heterogeneous in type, but they all have really put high on the agenda to improve the business environment. It's an initiative by the G7, and Germany is one of the driving forces in that. The African Continental Free Trade Area is, we think, very, very important too. It is not true for Nigeria, what I'm now saying, but there are a lot of smaller countries in Nigeria, in Africa. And if, in particular, foreign investors look at a market and the market is very small, then it is very hard to make an investment decision and to say, I go with my production line to this or that country. But if the markets are enlarged by free trade areas like this initiative, I think that is a very, very important consideration then for foreign investors to make this step. And for Nigeria, I guess, on the other side as well, because it enhances the possibilities to do trade with other businesses. Yeah, on finance, which is SDG, maybe to add a few words on that, we are part of the KfW group, a subsidiary of KfW. We work in development finance exclusively with the private sector. We have been doing that for more than 50 years. Africa is one of our main business areas. Our portfolio stands currently at around 2 billion euros of investments in Africa. And 2018 has been one of our, or the best year in Africa, where we committed about 500 million euros in new financings in a lot of countries in Africa, including in Nigeria. So we have a long-term history and experience on that, and we do know that a lot of corporates in Africa still lack financing, in particular when it comes to the smaller enterprises, to the medium enterprises. Financing, and in particular adequate financing in terms of tenor, long-term financing, local currency financing is really of utmost important. As said, we try to do something for that, very often together with our local banking partners. We have about worldwide 200 local banking partners who work very closely with. Some of them are obviously in Nigeria. And so in the combination, we offer these kind of financings. And from our results, what we can report there is that with our initiatives, we offer and secure like 470,000 jobs in Africa and like 24 billion in local income that is generated by income, by taxes, and so on and so forth. And in particular, through our banking partners, and some of them are here in Nigeria, and through private equity funds, around 430,000 African SMEs benefit of financings from ourselves. Do we see more opportunities? Yes, we do. And we have made some important steps forward over the last 12 months, let's say. First of all, we have grown our presence in Africa quite a bit. So far, we had offices in Kenya, in South Africa, and in Ghana. We are very proud to announce that we are about to open an office in Lagos in Nigeria. And if you look at Mr. Thielemann, the man with the glasses, he will head our office in in Lagos. He's already on the ground doing the last preparations to make it up and running. And that is a very, very important step for us to grow our presence in West Africa, because the office will have the task to cover for sure the Nigerian market, which is already quite big and gives a lot of work for the people then to do, but as well to grow, to work as a regional office in the whole Western African region. And the Western African region has been strengthened further because we wanted to strengthen our presence in the Francophone Western Africa as well, and have last year offered a representative office in Abidjan in the Côte d'Ivoire. So, because honestly, you might ask, why are we doing that? Why don't we do that all from Germany? But it's just not how we drive our business. We wanted to be very close to our partners in the various countries. We hire local staff, which is knowledgeable in the markets, in the culture, in the network, knows how to run the business there, and so our offices are abroad play a very important role there. We have on another initiative strengthened our activities, particularly in Africa, through creating so-called German desks. That's maybe of interest to the one or other German corporate here, because we wanted to kind of enlarge our offerings beyond that what we can do from our own balance sheet. And so we have formed partnership which is very reliable and long-time business partners in the banking world. In Nigeria, this is Access Bank, and Access Bank has in Nigeria and in Ghana, in cooperation with us and the German AHK, the German Chamber of Commerce, set up so-called German desk, where German businesses who have specifically questions, need advice, need other services, can be helped. And I think we get very good responses, because when people are dedicated to do one task, and in that sense it's to help German business, then this is very helpful if you have a dealing with a bank there. But on the other part, which is as important, it is a focal point for African companies who are interested in forming partnerships with German corporates, who are interested in buying German equipment and need financing, need a local financing. And so that is helpful to, in terms of the connectivity, really to strengthen the relationship among Africa and Nigeria and Germany. I'd like to mention two more things. You know that for the political agenda here in Germany, Africa is a top priority. Chancellor Merkel and the whole and a lot of ministers have really that high on their political agenda, and so we have been constantly wondering what we as DG can add to support that. We find it's a very good initiative, and we have formed one program which will be up and running sometime in June, July this year, which we call Africa Connect, which provides for smaller enterprises or for in general enterprises who think of smaller investments in Africa, supports with a loan program, with a risk-sharing feature, and facilitates by that investments in Africa. We think that is very important, because we all know that Germany has a lot of SMEs and a large Mittelstand, which is one of the backbones of the success of the German economy. And so it is very good and very helpful to have a program which is focusing on these businesses, which need some have ideas to invest in Africa, but it's certainly very helpful to support them with some financial products. So all over, I think, as said, and I think we have touched base on a few points, like the skills gap, which is very important to us. Finance, I think, is still lack. But in general, I think what I'd like to underline is, which is very natural when we work with corporates together with local corporates. It is a lot about financing, but it's not only about financing. And we understand ourselves as somebody who has advisory services, who gives explicit business support services to really grow together with our partners, with our local partners, like in Nigeria, the business, and really understand it's nothing we kind of designed for somebody. So we're thinking the other way around. We know that the entrepreneurs in Africa and Nigeria know exactly what they need and what their issues are. And we're trying to kind of reverse our thinking, really thinking from our clients, from our partners, and together with them then design, as just said, the financing, but any additional advisory services, business support services, which can go to environmental standard, working conditions, feasibility studies, and so on and so forth, to really make it a success. And we always understand ourselves that we are happy and proud if we can afterwards talk about a joint success together with our clients and partners. Thank you very much.
Christine, hi, this is Emma Eskin. Hi,
how are you?
You can hear us very well. Hopefully you can hear us as well.
Yes.
I just wanted to offer a really warm welcome to our colleagues and associates on the other side there with you. And also just offer, just shortly just to say that I think this is really a great initiative. You covered every single key issue that we're struggling with here in Nigeria, as we see is both a challenge as well as an opportunity. And if we can cover at least half of those in the time allotted, I think that would be great, because there are a number of issues here that you raised that are critical for us. I did want to mention, though, that the other thing that I think if we keep this in context in the conversation, it will be helpful. It's also a very useful time to have this type of engagement. Because in Nigeria, we are facing in the next few years a low growth scenario, right? In fact, we have negative per capita growth for the next several years. This is a new situation for Nigeria, and the government is trying to figure out how to tackle this and seize the private sector as a key development lever to make that happen. And that's very positive. You have a government that understands that the only way to move Nigeria forward is to engage very directly with the private sector. In fact, the private sector constitutes about 90% of GDP. So it really is an important moment to have a dialogue with government, but also to have a broader dialogue with stakeholders who also see the importance of developing a country like Nigeria, given its regional importance. And to the extent that we can put forward ideas, initiatives that help us do things differently, I think that will be very much appreciated. It's great that you're going to have an office here. I think that's a step in the right direction. But I do think we also have to be thinking out of the box. Otherwise, we will find ourselves finding opportunities. I think we will, within DEG and IFC, find opportunities. But the broader, we want to make sure the pie gets much bigger in general. And so we really do need to think out of the box. We're trying to do that at IFC. And then engage with government in that regard. And to the extent that we can come together as development finance institutions, and we've started that, I have to thank Bernd for already starting to, even though he's not here, he feels very present, very active already, to really start making sure we come together as development finance institutions, focusing on the private sector and engaging with stakeholders in the overall ecosystem. I think we will benefit greatly if we do that going forward. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Thank you.
Very good.
I'd like to ask the Consul General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Mr. Umar, to come and address us briefly.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry to have arrived here late. I was stuck in the office. Be that as it may, let me first of all associate ourselves with the organizers of this event. As we know, development throughout the world is never obtained from within. You have to achieve it through your partners. And Germany, to us, is one of those partners. You have invested a lot in the country, and you are still investing. And the partnership between Frankfurt and Lagos, which is the subject of this whole engagement, is one of the pioneer setting. And it is setting the focus and the template for collaboration. There are economic opportunities in Nigeria which are untapped at this moment. In the finance sector, in the development sector, even in the agriculture, your companies have not explored those avenues. Power, which we are lacking, is one area where German establishments can key in. Solar is there, wind is there, and what you need is the reassurance from we as representatives of the government. What happens to your investments when you go there? What do we do? Just like the KfW is trying to safeguard and then guide the German investors into Nigeria. For us as a government, what our government is trying to do currently, even though the first term is gradually closing in today by 12 midnight, by tomorrow the new government will be sworn in, but the policy will still continue. Government want to safeguard investors' security because that is the key problem we are facing at the moment. And how do we solve it? It's through collaboration. Security is not a government thing, like our president said yesterday. It's a community thing. It is for us as individuals to guarantee the safety of our neighbors, of our guests, of our visitors, of people who come to generate employment for us and who come to add value and provide service to our environment. So let me not waste your time. What I wish to add is to thank you once again and also to encourage you to do more. Like Oliver Twist will ask for more. There are a lot of openings, a lot of opportunities for German companies, for German investors, and we will want to reassure you that our government is there and they are there for you to defend and protect your investments. Once you meet with the threshold, there are tax holidays for you, and then if you meet the requirement, you can always flow back your tax. So thank you, and may the deliberation be for our own best interests.
Follower. Free seating. Oh, we need one more. No, there's a third one, and we've got 3 over the water. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me well in Lagos?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Good. I'd like to welcome my 2 esteemed panelists here and my 3 esteemed panelists there. We are Nina Boyo. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Being English, based in Paris, I'll take Boyo.
As co-head global for Africa at Herbert Smith and Freehills in Paris. Mrs. Leibach, I don't need to introduce. You've already heard her very clear comments on skills gaps, for example. On the other side of the water, we have Mrs. Estienne, who's the country officer for IFC. Then we have Mr. Adam Nuru, sitting directly next to her. He's the MD of First City and Monument Bank. Last year, if I'm correctly informed, fourth in the bank rankings in terms of share price increase. His share price shot up by almost 30%. Congratulations, sir. And also the 10th largest bank in terms of balance sheet in Nigeria. Next to him, we have Mr. Ike Chioke of Afrinvest, which is the asset management and investment company in Nigeria, I would say, par excellence. Just joining me here is Mr. Mark Lucassen. He's here in Germany, but he's actually in Lagos, so he's a bit of both. He's the managing director of the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria. And in that sense, he's the embodiment of German-Nigerian business relations. So let me set the stage a bit for what we want to discuss here. We're supposed to be talking about mobilizing private finance for the African growth story. And of course, we're going to narrow that down very slightly to the Nigerian growth or non-growth story. And I'm going to give you two different points of view as starters. The first one is from Business Day in December 2018, and I quote, "Among frontier markets globally, Africa offers one of the most exciting investment stories. But investors may need to be patient and understand some of the unique aspects of doing business in those markets, as well as the risks. As global demand for hard and soft commodities continues to grow, Africa is in an enviable position with its vast natural resources. Many African markets not only boast significant supplies of oil, gas, and hard commodities, but also have the means to expand the production of soft commodities. I would say, insight one, as we all know, this view on African growth is lopsided, because all it says is extract, take the value, but do not contribute to local value creation. So the second quote I have is from the IMF, also December 2018. The story of Africa's growth rate over recent years is a tale with several storylines. Key to the tale is the degree of dependence on commodities. The greater a country's reliance on commodities, the more dramatic the impact of a commodity shock, such as we saw in 2014. The more dramatic the shock, the more challenging the recovery. Again, something we've seen in Nigeria. Insight two, then, is African countries have to find ways to diversify their economies, to get away from a dependence on selling out to a dependence on creating in. And to do so, massive investments are required. I'll give you two fairly pertinent Nigerian examples. The Chinese railway companies at present building one railway in Nigeria are charging about $4.5 million per kilometer of track. The country requires about 3,500 kilometers of track. How can a country come up with 20 billion US just to create the basic infrastructure for rail? Another example, at the moment there are about 14 gigawatts of diesel gensets in Nigeria. That means all the people using them depend on the commodity price of oil, and they're busy polluting their lives and, in great extent, their children. To get away from that, to knock out half of them with solar, you will need another 15 billion US dollars in investment. Now, no government anywhere is going to be able to shell out that sort of money, which brings us to how do we mobilize private money for private investment. So I'd like to start this afternoon with a question for Mrs. Essien as regards mobilizing private finance. Which private sectors does IFC in Nigeria see as mainly driving investments, and how?
It's a great question, because we are in the midst of actually doing our strategy for Nigeria over the next 4 years. It's important to understand the role of the power sector here. So the power sector here is really, for most sectors, in most countries, a driver of growth. And in Nigeria, anywhere 40-50% of operational costs of most businesses are power costs. And so that actually has a huge impact on Nigeria's competitiveness. So if we were to pick a sector that if you were to address the issues in the power sector, the implication of that for light manufacturing, for heavy manufacturing, for agro-processing, for all the areas where Nigeria could actually become a significant regional player, could actually be really substantively addressed. So for us, that's a driver, and we're trying to focus a lot of our energy around what we can do, pardon the pun, for the power sector. The real issues there are policy issues, and so what we're hoping is that with this next administration coming into place, we will be able to continue a dialogue with government around really what is the right policy and regulatory environment to ensure that we are addressing the main issues in the power sector. There are many issues, and the sector is in real trouble. And so this is really important to address. The previous speaker mentioned opportunities in solar and wind. Those opportunities are there as well. But in order to really tackle the grid, the grid in Nigeria, we really have a lot of policy work to be done. There are also a number of opportunities where we've been seeing in the off-grid side as well. That's evolving, I think, very positively. Finding commercial opportunities there for us is a key objective of ours in the next several months. So I would put power as sort of the fundamental issue. We also talked about the role of the digital economy, and that we see also in the next few years as something critical for Nigeria. Nigeria has made a lot of progress in digital infrastructure over a period of time, has gone from 3% to a significant amount in terms of overall digital infrastructure, but the costs are quite high, and so we need to see more rollout of digital infrastructure across the country. We need to see policy reform that will limit the tax environment. Now you have federal taxes on top of state taxes, and so it is really inhibiting the growth of the digital economy here. But if we were to address some of those issues, and we are looking at that as well, we also see that potential for that to be an enabler for the overall economy. And then I would say, as a third area, financial services. The financial services sector here, we're represented by two gentlemen here who are three, actually, including Bert, who are focused on the potential to move capital into this market. There's an extraordinary amount that needs to be done here. The Nigerian banking sector is quite indigenous, and I think that's something we're quite proud of. The Nigerian banks have really developed the sector, but what we've seen is that when you compare Nigeria to some of the other countries, peer countries, private credit to the real sector is well below what it should be. In fact, it's half of what it should be relative to the size of the economy. And so we have been an active investor in the financial services sector here over the past few years. It's probably the lion's share of what we do. It's been the lion's share of what we do for the past few years. So we see a lot more potential there to do more in the financial services sector, and we're very happy that in the last couple of months, we've seen some regulatory reform that will actually advance the role of mobile money in Nigeria. And so we could do mobile money before, but it was limited to the banking sector, and unfortunately, we have not seen the type of innovation and growth that we've seen in other countries where mobile money has really transformed the financial sector. Now we have the potential to do that in Nigeria. We hope that in the next couple of years we'll see more regulation that allows there to be more innovation in the mobile money space. But we do see that we're now potentially at the cusp of what could be a transformation in the financial services sector here for Nigeria. So if you take those three sectors, I think I would consider those to be enabling sectors. And we're looking very at opportunities across those sectors. But Nigeria is a place where, whether it's healthcare or, again, manufacturing, gas industrialization, tech-enabled services, real estate, you name it, there are opportunities really across all of those landscapes. And we are looking at opportunities across those. But those three sectors I would characterize as being the enabling sectors that will then have outsized impact on the other sectors. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give it over to you, Ms. Leibach. Would you agree, or are you looking at other sectors as well?
No, I think we'll have a lot in common there, both in terms of our views and how to run our business. And it's obviously no secret that in particular larger infrastructure projects, we very often work with IFC or other development finance institutions. But still, let me add a few words on that. I think building on that, what was just said, I think infrastructure is obviously very important, and I think there are lots of investors interested in general investing in infrastructure. Yeah, there's a lot of private money flooding around the world. The question is just where do you find a place and where are the African economies and governments set up the regulatory framework and the overall business environment in a way that really the capital is interested in coming to it. And I think it is true for as for IFC as for ourselves that part of our mission is not only to from our own balance sheet to bring funding to provide funding to projects in Africa, but as well to attract private investors, and so that really the huge demand, which you just earlier described in terms of numbers, can be met. And I think it can be achieved if, as I said, I mean the regulatory framework and the business environment is set adequately. And so all the political initiatives that are taken, I think, are very much appreciated by us. When it comes to other sectors besides infrastructure, when we're talking about what we call our corporates business, I think Nigeria is a very, very good example, and that goes back to what I earlier said, that when you have a larger population and a growing middle class with more income than before, I think there's a lot of demand in everything that is going to consumer products, yeah, because I mean that's actually what people are naturally looking for. So what we are trying really is to work together with local corporates that are able to provide local products in the consumer space. Because, I mean, that's sadly still very true for a lot of African countries, that a lot of is imported and there's very, very little local production. And if that was achieved, that there would be more local production for part of the consumer products at least, that would not only help the current account balance, but as well create jobs and diversify the industry, because as I think you hinted as well, I mean, there's a lot of exploration still from oil and gas and other minerals, and it would be really great if we can add something to the target that we see more diversification there.
Thank you. Mr. Nuru, Mr. Chioke, does that all resonate with you, or both of you being in Lagos, you're only thinking that in Lagos, that's where the consumer goods industry is for Nigeria, we don't need the rest of the country? What are you looking at in terms of sectors?
Okay, all right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I kind of align with what has been said earlier on, but I think there's also a larger discussion around the whole financial inclusion story and how you get SME to be a major part of this development within the country. And I think that's really the biggest challenge. Operating in an environment that has a deficit of infrastructure poses a different set of threats. And I think how we try and support growth of the SME sector to address two things: one, to improve our productive capacity, but two, more importantly, to address the issue of unemployment, which has a link to insecurity, and the things we need to address and focus on. And I think that, yes, the banking industry has been quite active. However, generally speaking, banks tend to support the much larger companies and forget the SMEs, because the risks in that space are very apparent. And I think things around how do we support SMEs in this drive for development, things around how do we help to mitigate some of the risks through some risk share kind of arrangements to support SMEs. A particular sector for us that's very important is agriculture. agriculture is a key sector and biggest contributor to GDP. However, from a banking point of view, you find that there's very little lending to that sector. Recently, we've seen some intervention from government providing certain longer-term kinds of financing agriculture along the entire value chain. So whether it be to a large corporate that's looking to integrate backwards and improve their supply chain, or to individual, smallholder farmers, I think there's tremendous opportunity in that space. I think that as a focus area, I think is very critical. If we find the levers we can pull, we've done some work with in the agri space across that value chain, from the corporates down to the individual farmers. And the point you made earlier on about digital, I think financial inclusion is an important part. And through a combination of technology and agency banking relationships, you begin to spread financial services to the rural farmer. I think we've seen major improvements in supply of inputs to farmers. So we're seeing better yields of small-scale farmers. There are still issues around price of their commodities. But more importantly, I think mechanization. That's one critical element that's missing. Farmers cannot, even though they have high yields, cannot continue to depend on manual labor to do scale. And I think that's one area I think that it could really help improve the yields and outputs of that sector. But I think it's an ongoing thing. It would be nice to find a lot of support for the private sector to participate in agriculture with that value chain. Right now, the key financier just seems to be really certain intervention funds that the central bank is providing. I think beyond just that, getting farmers to improve their yields, get access to finance, and the whole financial inclusion story, I think is an important part to unlocking all the potential we see in Nigeria.
Thank you, Jeremy. If I may add a few words to this discussion, I think we shouldn't forget the issue of education and healthcare. These are two sort of negatives that kind of pull down the opportunity for financing businesses. Often from an advisory point of view, even when you get mid-size or large-size companies come to present investment ideas, you do find that the quality of the presentation is still lacking. But when you go down the value chain, you then see that the years of neglect of education has really created a challenge for many businesses, because the talent pool coming out requires you to almost have to retrain most of the people that you're entering your franchise. And that has implications for how you address growth. On the healthcare side, you see there will still suffer large issues around infant mortality, maternal mortality, and the prevalence of many diseases that already have been eliminated. Again, from the point of view of how we see getting finance into large businesses, I think the limiting factor has been the policy issues, like Emma mentioned, particularly in the power sector, which is clear and present. Aside from just trying to unravel the policy issues there, if you look at the oil and gas sector, which is a key income earning sector of the country, we're still strangulated by fuel subsidy issues, where the government will spend billions of scarce dollars on fuel subsidy, whereas we're neglecting education, healthcare, and things that can address more income to the very poor of the country. With 200 million people in Nigeria, and now 92 million very poor people, practically half of the country are very, very poor. So we all have a big challenge, and I think that the country is actually facing an existential issue, which is if we kind of maintain the population growth rate, then we have a time bomb when it will become almost unsustainable. So time is now, and I think this discussion is very timely, to be able to get the policymakers to feel the sense of urgency to begin to tweak at those bottlenecks in power, in oil and gas, in healthcare, in education. I sit on the board of a university in the north, and we've been trying to expand our franchise through digitalization by having maybe campuses in Lagos and Abuja so that our lecturers who are American trained can also train people further afield. But the Nigerian University Commission will not let us do that. So, and if you think about the needs of education, to insist that you have to build a physical structure each time or get a separate license each time you want to go, that means that we are really faced with, it seems like the policy decision makers don't understand the challenges of the issues in front of them. So I think that I'd like to leave that there as an opening line.
Ike, thank you. I think we should just say for people here, the universities in question would be over 1,000 kilometers apart. It's a very large country. And in the absence of the sort of rail infrastructure or road infrastructure that we take for granted here, moving even between the university campus and Lagos is difficult. So basic infrastructure, and that also fits into what Mr. Nuru was saying, just for agriculture to move produce out, there has to be the right policy on which roads get built in small areas rather than big roads in big areas. But to address very briefly the notion of mechanization, Mark Lucassen, you're on the cutting edge of German SMEs wanting to come to Nigeria or not wanting to come to Nigeria. How do you attract them? How would you get them to invest in mechanizing Nigerian agriculture, for example?
Well, Jeremy, thanks for the question, and my regards to my home of choice, Lagos. Nice to see familiar faces now on the other side of the television screen. Thanks for the question. You're referring to our core job, which is to attract German SMEs to one of the more complicated markets in Africa. Nevertheless, we're talking about the powerhouse of Africa. The former Foreign Minister of Germany, Mr. Steinmeier, called it the powerhouse of Africa. Why did he do so? Several reasons: largest economy, largest population, and not to forget, a very dynamic and a very business-minded population. I think this is also, with respect, and please forgive me to all the non-Nigerians in the room, this is one of the key factors and the unique selling points of Nigeria. Nevertheless, we are facing a tremendous challenge, which is the image. So part of my job is to correct, to balance this image without being too optimistic. Our job is to promote bilateral business relations. We do that through events like this year, so I would like to congratulate the organizers to put Nigeria finally in the focus, because we have been seeing a trend that, specifically from the German side, to focus on many African countries, and normally Nigeria is left out, unfortunately. So finally, I think we are coming to understand that this is one of the most important countries. From a German perspective, we are the second largest German presence in Sub-Sahara after South Africa. We are currently looking at 100 German companies, including, of course, mostly SMEs. We, of course, have the large corporations, the well-known companies. We heard about the IPP project, of course, a famous company from Munich, companies from Ludwigshafen. Of course, the usual suspects are there. But one of the key features of Nigeria is that many German SMEs, the hidden champions, as they are called here, have been active and very successfully active in Nigeria for many decades, partly for more than 100 years. I can tell you there's a company, I'm not allowed, of course, to mention any names, that does something like bottling equipment from Bavaria, 70% market share. That's striking, and that is specific for Nigeria. It's an insider market, overpriced and underserviced, but once you dare to enter with the right partners, with a long breath, it's a very rewarding market because margins are much, much higher than anywhere else in Sub-Saharan Africa. I don't want to underestimate the challenges. Ease of doing business indices and other international indices speak a clear language. We're always ranked in the lower third. But I can tell you one thing, government is a starship in Nigeria, the economy is something very different. So luckily, the Nigerian economy is something that also works, progresses without government intervention. So I also like to mention that I like to appreciate the fact that now, I heard it from my colleagues in Lagos, that the focus is now on the private sector. Coming back to my specific role, our specific team task, we have been in Nigeria for more than 36 years, and I'm working with a team of 15 staff in Lagos. Our focus sectors are predominantly, and it's representing the relevance of the sectors here this afternoon, energy and environmental technologies, vocational training, and startups and the new economy. We'll come to that later, I believe. And we would like also to put more focus on agriculture and food processing, because we understand that currently 60% of the produce in Nigeria is wasted because from production, the fields to the market doesn't reach because of a lack of infrastructure, a lack of the packaging industry, a lack of the cooling chain. And there we as German SMEs, of course, we have a technology to offer, we have services to offer. So the key ingredients here is there's a small but well-connected German community on ground, and I think that's attractive for other German companies to come, because you are not a crash test dummy. And so use us, please, for making contacts, for networking. This is our job. And one last word regarding the term SMEs, because there's often quite some confusion whether you talk to Nigerians or to Germans, because from a German perspective, an SME is normally a company, family-owned, couple of thousand employees, and roughly $1 billion or euro turnover per year. That answered the question. From a Nigerian perspective, an SME is a small company. So there also we have to make sure, and that's not only intercultural communication, we have to make sure that we understand what we are talking about. But I think I'll leave it here for now. Thank you.
Anyone in Lagos like to give us your definition of an SME?
It's a very good question. So I think we tend to segregate it, some further, and maybe look at it in terms of micro SME. Now, various people, make that definition different kinds of ways. But you're looking at businesses that are sole proprietorships who are involved in small economic activity, up to a level where you find a company typically doing anything up to about ₦1 billion in turnover a year as a big SME in Nigeria. But I think the opportunity for growth really is further as you really go down, because it helps to address some of the other social issues of insecurity and things like that. And I think that's where we really have to focus on. So talking about SMEs in agriculture, which is an area of focus for us, I think when you talk about processing, I think it's really around somebody who is cultivating 5 acres, 10 acres or less. How does he have a platform to sell his goods, to guarantee his price, things like that. I think that's really where the opportunity and size really is. So it's very, very fragmented. And I think today with certain technologies, we're seeing the opportunity to aggregate those farmers and manage them as a whole block. But it's in terms of size, they are really much smaller than what you'll find in other parts of the world. So I would say, micro SMEs, anything up to ₦1 billion in annual turnover. And that's fine.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what, about 3 million US? 1 billion naira? Yeah, it's about that. Something like that.
Roughly, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, my old joke was always Nigerians love to travel, but tomatoes don't. And since all the tomato growing is in the north, they never get south. But anyway, be that as it may. Nino, what challenges do you see when advising one of his potential German SMEs on investing in Nigeria directly?
So I'm a lawyer, and so people often think that they're going to hear the pessimistic view. First, just to say thank you ever so much for inviting me to come and speak. It feels like a culmination of things. My mother's German, my father grew up in Kenya, and I've been travelling back and forth to Lagos for about 15 years. So I wear the badge of Nigerian Nina, and that's how I'm known by a number of my friends, with real pride. In terms of looking at Africa, I was a natural resources lawyer, and that's where I first started working in Africa. So in a way, also faced the challenge of diversifying my practice. When we look back sort of 10, 15 years, it was this Africa rising story. Always, almost a blind optimism that everything was possible. Then we saw this sort of commodity crash, and the story changed. And it's very much a sort of African realism story now, whereas I'm still teetering on the optimistic side. Looking at the challenges, it's very difficult to, I'm going to say it's very difficult and then I'm going to do it, but generalize around the whole of Africa what those problems are. It is the 54, 55 jurisdictions, each with their own issues. to give you an idea of the scale and the opportunity, within the firm, we've acted across all of the jurisdictions. Last year alone, 300 files we advised on. So if you're not out there trying to seize those projects, someone else is. But the question was about challenges. So let me try and bring out some of the key themes. I think the first, and it was touched on by others, is this regulatory uncertainty and slow political processes. EY does a survey every year, and it comes top in terms of impediments is this sort of regulatory uncertainty. I spoke at a conference just last year in Africa, and we polled the room. And again, this idea of not knowing exactly what the framework is for investment, the slow processes and getting the permits and approvals you need. And that's why having the right partners is really important in trying to break through that. I mean, I think Nigeria can be applauded for having very clear policy statements. You know, they have their roadmaps, they have their master plans, which sounds almost like something out of a sort of superhero comic about their master plans. It's about implementation. I think you mentioned in the outset patience. I remember once someone saying to me in a meeting, you have the nice watches, but we have the time. And you need to make sure that you understand the project that you're trying to implement and what kind of investment that means. You're not going to just stay in Europe. Go into the country, understand who you're dealing with. Now, Nigeria is a very dynamic environment, but that's not going to be the same throughout Africa. We talked a little bit about infrastructure. That's obviously a real impediment. Huge infrastructure financing needed. Electricity and the power shortages, again, in McKinsey's report, that came up as the top 3 impediment. But I think I was just looking at the lovely signs behind this driving innovation. And what we've seen in Nigeria is that some of the challenges are also the innovation. So we look at some of those issues like the off-grid solar, and I see some of our clients, they're no longer a solar developer or a renewable company. What they're doing is, yes, developing the solar technology. They've become a bank. They're financing the end users. Then next step through sort of, the financing available through using mobile phones, developing goods that can run on those solar. So they're becoming manufacturers. And it's that diversification, I think, that is really interesting across Africa. The last point I just wanted to mention, which some see as a challenge, and I actually want and encourage you all to see as a huge positive, is the local partnerships. Local content is absolutely imperative. And this isn't local content just in the sense of employees and supply chain. If you look at a country like Nigeria, and I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about an example from my oil and gas days, but they actively encourage local content as well in the equity space. They said it doesn't need to be all the international oil and gas companies. Let us create strong national companies. And I think for any of you looking to develop your business in the continent, it's very important to understand your local regime, and part of that is getting the right partners as well.
Thank you. Lagos, what do you think about local equity? Do you think it's something that has to be pushed harder so that we get more local equity together with international equity?
Absolutely. I think that although the Nigerian economy allows foreigners to come in and set up a business and own it 100%, when you think of the complexity of this market, it is helpful to have a local partner. Indeed, you find that there is money in Nigeria. It's pockets of money hidden in different structures. If you look at our pension industry, we now have about perhaps 8 trillion naira in pension assets, and most of it is invested in federal government bonds and treasury bills, unfortunately. So it's not for lack of money. If you think about the deposits in the banking system, I think we're over, you're probably closer to this 15 trillion naira in deposits. And so you do find, with the combination of those in the private fund asset management like AfriInvest and those in the regulated asset management business and the money in the banking system and then private equity firms coming around, there's enough opportunity for capital raising within the country. But when we think about local equity, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is all sourced locally from Nigeria. It could just be entities that are already established in Nigeria have Nigerian partners and shareholders who can contribute some sort of equity support to any investment coming from abroad. And that local equity will come with partnerships and linkages that will certainly help you see through some of the unseen bottlenecks of that business opportunity. Just before I came into this meeting, I was reviewing a proposal from a company in renewable energies who has managed to get a number of shopping malls to sign up to say that we would like to change our power system from diesel generators to solar panels on the roof of the shopping malls. But then when I began to explain on the risk issues around that opportunity, like even if you know the owner of the shopping mall, when he's not able to rent out the space in the mall to retailers because of sort of a contracting economy like Emma hinted at the beginning of this session, then how are we going to get our money back? And so there are all these interconnections which local partners can put on the table once you begin to really examine the opportunity. Well, having said that, we do feel there's a huge opportunity and a good potential for local partnerships. And I will end by saying that amongst the hundreds of millions of Nigerians, the 200 million Nigerians, there are very wealthy individuals that themselves, you'd be surprised if you ask them to step up and bring $20 million or 20 million euros for an investment and it's well structured, they're more than happy to dip in their bank account and fund it on their own. So you find quite easily a handful of, perhaps up to 100 high net worth individuals that have capacity to do $1 billion, $2 billion transactions by themselves at any point in time.
So how do we bring those together with
Yes.
foreigners?
Well, it's again, it depends on the space you're playing. If it's an SME, which is $1 billion company coming into Nigeria, it is clearly not a small company to be considered one of the top companies in Nigeria. Coming with a team of advisors, coming up with a proposal, looking around the landscape, deciding where the competitive environment is, who are the potential partners, and who should I sort of team up with. A number of ways that many new entrants use to size up the market comes through their very first set of advisors, and that could be their law firm or their accounting firm or their financial advisor. And those will be the people that make the first introductions, and they will typically introduce who they know. Other people do it in a more formal manner, go to the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission in Abuja, or go to the Chamber of Commerce, or come to the German Business Partnership and ask for a list of names and talk to everyone. But you've got to start with people you know. And I must say in Nigeria that I wouldn't recommend Googling people and calling them up. I think that you want to get at least two or three references about each potential partner to be sure that you're on the right political divide, for one, and also on the right ethical divide, because some names you may team up with, you then turn up and then realize you're dealing with someone that maybe is on the no-fly list of the U.S. government or something like that.
I would add to that, if I may, that I agree completely. And I would just say, I think in order to build strong local partnerships, you really do have to make the commitment to be here. You don't have to have a whole outfit in country, but this is an environment where relationships matter. Market knowledge is really important. It's very dynamic, as was noted earlier. And so it's important to be connected and not to think that you can kind of remote control things. The reality is that things are always in changing and in flux in this environment, and people are responding to those changes as they see them. And investors who have a approach that, well, we'll just kind of remote control this, I think they are not so well served by that kind of relationship. So it's important to be as present here as possible, if not having boots on the ground, but really to be quite present, just to understand how things are evolving, how people are thinking, just to kind of stay connected to the dynamism of this market. I think those are the best strategies. I think When we see companies that are willing to put boots on the ground here, that's an investment in a future prospect. That's an investment in trying to figure out how to find the right opportunities. We as IFC are very bullish on the Nigerian environment, even with a whole host of devaluations over the past few years. We have seen double-digit returns in real returns here in certain sectors. So it's possible to invest hard currency here and do well with carefully selected sectors and partners. But it definitely requires that proximity. And so finding a way to do that is going to be, I think, important in terms of a critical success factor.
Well, I'd like to take that up and pass it on to Mrs. Leibach, who's actually realized such a partnership indirectly with the DEG Access collaboration. Perhaps you could describe the difficulties and the enjoyable sides.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I think it's not an equity partnership in any way. It is a cooperation, but it has proven to be very successful so far. Maybe I'll describe a bit what our thinking was. I mean, we wanted to find a new way to promote the collaboration and trade and partnership among Nigerian and German corporates. And certainly we as DEG, we can have our financing products and can bring that to the market in Nigeria. But it has its limits in the way when we are talking to SMEs. And we were just discussing that, how big is a Nigerian SME, and the financing amounts required is something we can deal not so good with from Cologne, and even with our representative office, but we don't have a banking license there. So it was really about how can we address the issue that we have on the one side, interested SMEs in Nigeria that are looking for partnerships, that are looking for German goods to incorporate, that are looking for ways financing their production, for example, because they have a long-term contract, supply contract with a German customer. And on the other side, how can we facilitate that if German SMEs, and there are smaller ones than the one with the 1 billion, which are still interested in Africa, how can we facilitate for them if they come to Nigeria and need a banking contact, need a banking account to start with, or financing, how can we facilitate that? And since we have, as said earlier, we have allowed worldwide, globally, like 200 banking relationships where we are invested with equity or provide debt. And some of them are in Nigeria. Access Bank is one of our long-standing trustful partners there. It came up the idea, what about if you create a German desk where we put either a German national or a Nigerian national with both language skills, knowing both countries, and being dedicated to serve to serve on the one side the Nigerian corporates, on the other side the German corporates which have an interest in Nigeria, and vice versa. And I think we all understand from our own businesses and institution, if you have somebody who is dedicated to do some specific task, it just creates momentum. It creates first publicity, and we have done a lot there so that Nigerian/German corporates know that this is existing, that they know where to go to. And it creates momentum in terms of creating new ideas, making things easier, quicker, and so on and so forth. And that is one part, and I think we're always talking about a mosaic, what all needs to be done to improve trade and then relationships between two countries. So it's one part of that which facilitates to make things a little easier, to make things quicker, and to provide opportunities in terms of financing. And we have an Access Bank, actually, we have been so successful in doing that in Nigeria that we're copying the same thing in Ghana now. So we're very hopeful that we'll grow that further. We are not on our own. We're working with the German Chamber of Commerce there, because the German Chamber of Commerce, as already described, is always the first contact point when a German corporate is going into a country. So I think, it's developing as a quite great, nice, and good idea. Yeah.
Was it a very lengthy process?
No, honestly not, because I think when we were kind of trading ideas, it became very clear very quickly that there's something in it. I mean, and I think it's proven to be so successful because there's something in it for all of us. There's something in it for us from what we are asked for our mission. It is something in it for the German Nigerian corporates, and it's something in it for access banks because they can grow their business and extend their corporate business. Yeah, and I think when you find an idea where everybody is kind of benefiting from it, then it gains a lot of momentum in a quick time. And I think it was earlier said Nigeria has a very dynamic business environment, and I think from that experience I can only underscore that if there is a good idea, I think there's a lot force and energy behind it to make it happen. Yeah?
Well, I'm very happy to hear you say that, because often Nigeria is described as very low on the ease of business metric, so people automatically think it's going to be difficult when you're actually describing. I deliberately didn't ask you first the other way around, because I wanted just to hear the honest opinion. Nina, do you see legal frameworks as a big hurdle for a European company coming to Nigeria?
So let me give you an example. I wrote an article about 10 years ago on the imminent changes to the petroleum landscape. And my friends in Lagos will probably nod, and it's still not come out. And so it can be seen as an impediment to investment, or you can be in a dynamic environment where people seem to manage to get on without it. I mean, to not have the cornerstone of the industry legislation sitting on the wings for a long time, we thought this is going to be the end of any new investment, and we've seen the investment continue. But that isn't an anomaly. I mean, the basic rules are when people are looking at where to, we looked at different companies, had their categorization of different countries, high risk, low risk, don't go there ever. Understanding what you are walking into and having some certainty that those regulatory frameworks will stay in place for the foreseeable future, or at least the lifespan of your investment, is incredibly important. And that is certainly one of the criteria we're often asked by clients to help them with their country entries, so to look at different jurisdictions and where to move into. And those which don't have a clear regulatory system just means it's very difficult to structure around the risks, because you don't actually know what those risks are. And we talked earlier about, the investment is there, how do you match the projects to the investment? Well, you can have a great project, you can have the funds, but if the regulatory framework isn't there, it's not going to get off the ground.
Mark, for you, what do you think we have to do to get a dual taxation agreement between Nigeria and Germany?
That question was not on your list. That's a surprise. Double taxation, well, that affects, of course, not only me individually, but my staff and, of course, all businesses. I think, as you very well know, that's an issue that needs to be dealt with by both governments. We would be very much interested to find ourselves in a future situation where having such a double taxation agreement. That's one of the obstacles for sure. But I would also like to talk about some of the other obstacles, regulatory issues. I think currently our major challenge from a German SME perspective is Ports Authority, Customs, Tax Authority, FRS. These are the real issues, because we've been facing challenges in terms of misusing those changing regulatory frameworks for the benefit of the state or for the benefit of those institutions, and for the disadvantage of the private sector. We have to talk about that. That's a reason why the ease of doing business index is still low, although we are slowly progressing. The German answer to that normally is to, and we would advise on that in the same way, is to slowly move into a country like Nigeria. You asked me, or you asked others here, the question of investment. Most Nigerians love this topic, investing in Nigeria, but let's be honest to ourselves. I mean, as we say in German, capital is a shy deer. Why would I invest in a country that has a certain stigma? And part of the stigma, part of it is correct, part of course, too negative, far too negative. The issue is that normally SMEs, specifically family-owned SMEs, are moving into Nigeria first by searching for the right partner, a distributor. Selling machinery, selling equipment, standard. After that, understanding that the distributor might not exactly act the way they want, not exactly exploit the market they want, then they open an office. And we heard before, Nigeria actually is very easy in terms of opening an office. The regulations in that sense are fairly liberal. It's very easy to open a company. There are no restrictions in terms of local versus foreign shares, etc. So you have your own office now, your own LTD, for example, and then starts something that is very much interesting for us, for the community. Then you normally employ staff to render after-sales services. And then slowly you think of assembly lines, etc. And then we are talking about investments. But let me tell you, most of my 100 German clients are at the stage of a sales office and an after-sales team. That's a reality. Production, I think, let's be honest to ourselves here, is currently, just mentioned, or people mentioned the energy supply. This is a restriction. Factor costs are very high. Lagos is a very, very, very high-priced environment, 3 times Munich if it comes to real estate. So that's a challenge. What do we need to do? I think, as I said, we need to advise people that in a way that they don't fall into the traps. And I think this is what we have been doing here for a while successfully. We cannot afford that any of those clients ends up somewhere in the doldrums. And for that, we are a bilateral organization. So not only are we first contact point for the German side, but also we are the first contact point for the Nigerian side. And I would like to announce that after 30 long years, our affiliated Nigerian German Business Association, the membership organization, will be transforming into a bilateral chamber by the end of the year. That's another very important step, giving the confidence of Nigerian and foreign partners, German partners in that case, to the country. I would also like to stress the very close collaboration of German institutions in Nigeria. I think maybe there's a certain pattern that the harsher or the more challenging the environment, the closer the business community sticks together, and the closer the institutional community is doing the same. I would like to thank our colleagues of DEG, but also Germany Trading Invest, GIZ, beloved, you can say beloved enemies or beloved partners in crime. Fact is that we have been sharing a very close relationship with our institutional partners on the German side, and I think given the fact that we are only 500 German nationals in the whole of Nigeria nowadays, we are a small community, this is the only way to showcase bilateral collaboration, because otherwise we have competitors, the world is not sleeping, definitely not Nigeria, so I'm very happy about that, and I would like to encourage our partners here to contact us and to use that platform of a bilateral relationship.
Thank you, Mark. I can only second that. Please go to Mark if you wish to go to Lagos. But to put the ball back in the court in Ikoyi, how would you advise a German investor on securing his investment if he came to you, Mr. Nuru or Ike?
Well, there's no magic wand, but I'll attempt to answer it. I think the point that's been made is really how you come, what partnerships you form. And I think the approach typically is how it's been described. You first of all come in to test the waters first. But I think more importantly, like I said, you have to be on the ground. Because on the ground you get a better sense of how to do it. Having a financial partner here and coming in the form of some equity and some local debt would bring some structure and some control to that journey, which I think is very important. So working with a good local partner here, a financial partner here, understands the market, understands the sectors, can help you navigate, I think, and ease yourself into it. I think it's a good approach to take. Some companies I've seen in testing the market is they try out with some minimum level of credit to a local partner, and then over time they build confidence and relationships. They now begin to invest more and more and expand from there. I think there's a large informal sector, and I think to get a sense of what's going on and the opportunity, you have to be on ground. Oftentimes, when we engage foreign companies, I think that they have that anxiety, that nervousness around Nigeria based on what they hear. But I think by the time they have some presence here, they begin to get comfortable. And I think we've seen there's so many examples of people who have come and have been in this event and done extremely very well. I think that's something. I mean, the Nigerian community is a very large population compared to Germany, certainly. But I think that local partnerships are very strong. Getting good references, like Chike said, don't Google, come to Lagos, sit down with us, we'll talk to you about what the opportunities are. I think it's an important approach. Then it does two things. One, it helps you have a feel for the size of the opportunity. Two, working with partners on ground helps you navigate, and those partners, having a financial partner, I think is important. And I think DG shared the experience with Access Bank. I think that part is amazing. We've seen them work with various groups. We've seen them work with women, we've seen them work with SMEs, and we've seen the impact that's caused in Nigeria. So I think that I would say it's a cautious approach, but working with the right kind of partners. Then gradually come into the system. But ultimately, looking to have your feet on the ground here in Nigeria, I think is critical for any company trying to come to Nigeria. The other thing I want to make is something that's relatively a bit new. Right? It's something that we see a very big opportunity and growing trend, which is in some sectors that are not too challenged by infrastructure gaps, which is the creative industry. So you're right. I mean, the whole port problems, transport problems here and there. But we've seen that in the creative industry, we've seen that those challenges have been overcome because we have basic infrastructure that can deal with those kind of industries. So there's another opportunity where I would say, are a bit easier. The only challenge we have is things around maybe intellectual property rights and things like that. But I think that the market for Nigerian creativity is not just Nigeria, it's global. If you walk into a large mall in Asia or in Middle East, you probably won't find a Nigerian good, but you probably hear Nigerian music playing, and then you wonder, where is this coming from? It's an opportunity, and it's a growing business, and I think that's one area that Nigeria has a lot of potential, which we need to harness. Now that obviously has much lower risks, if I put it that way, and the opportunities are significant.
Thank you. Jeremy, if I might add my thought to it, there's a term I use for the business environment in Nigeria. It came up to me when I was discussing with the management of MTN just before their listing. It's a shortened form, it's called VUCA, V-U-C-A. The environment here is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So when you're operating in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment, you really need to do your homework. And so in addition to having formal relationships, you have to extend them to the informal. So yes, you have come in, you've set up a franchise, maybe through, like Ms. Leibach explained, through Access Bank, you have a platform here. As that business begins to extend, you want to actually know the homes of your business partners. So if they invite you for their daughter's birthday party, please go. If they tell you that there's an 80th birthday party of their father, please by all means go. Because it's those interconnections that will begin to tell you how to situate that investment. So in Nigeria, the it's not a formal business environment, to be honest. To run your business on a formal basis, 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 on a Monday to Friday, it will fail eventually. You've got to include that 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon, that 8 p.m. Saturday evening till midnight, and those interactions will begin to help you understand how you deal with, Mark said, you deal with the customs people, the tax people, because you could be sitting next to the guy that's the chairman of the tax office, and then you explain your problem, and then you can resolve it. And those are critical. And if you take it away, at the entry level, I find that this is when you're going to have the biggest challenges. Then you set up, and your business can run smoothly, but be careful if you're very successful, because we have a very jealous government, which is unfortunately what is happening to MTN. If you become very successful, then they begin to come at you from all directions to see how to extract more than a pound of flesh. And so that means you have to continue to engage your systems, the whole organization, to be sure that you're managing that opportunity. Lastly, as you think about opportunities for German firms in Nigeria, one area to tap into, if you look at the demographic situation that Ms. Leibach explained at the beginning, Nigeria with such a youthful population is looking for employment. Whereas in Europe, and like Germany, you've got an older population, and so you increasingly be looking for labor to support your economy the way it is. Now, with technology, all the stuff that's going on in artificial intelligence, it's easy to set up training institutions in Nigeria and train the population well to the standard to deliver software skills, technology skills from Nigeria to service and support industry in Germany. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that to happen. We already have seen companies like Andela out of San Francisco come here, and they have over 1,000 engineers that are working in Lagos and some other cities in Nigeria and are effectively supporting global companies in Europe and North America. There's huge upside for that to continue.
Thank you, Ike. I think that's a very pertinent example. But you just described the entry and making sure that, you didn't have to get more than your pound of flesh. How would you go about explaining to a German private equity investor how you would structure his exit?
The exit, here, the traditional exit routes would be a private equity investor. I would like to encourage them to come with a technical partner and who may be risk averse initially and didn't want to go in alone into a market like Nigeria. Because that strategic partner could be a natural exit. Once they see the business up and running, it will be a natural extension for the PE firm to sell to the strategic and move on after 3 to 5 years. Another way around that could be to look at the local listing opportunity on the stock exchange. Our stock exchange has not done too well in the last decade since the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. We've been sort of limping along. There have been very few listings of offerings. But there are some people that have actually taken advantage of that window to exit. You also find in Nigeria that there are different cadres of private equity firms. There are PE firms that are targeting the very small investment sizes of about 5 to 10 of 20 million euros as an entry ticket. Then there are other PE firms that want to begin their approach into Nigeria when the deal size is between 50 to 100 million euros. So indeed, a PE firm that's coming in at the smaller level could well sell to a bigger PE firm when you have a much more established business with systems, processes, procedures, and the other guys will want to take it on to another level when it becomes a pan-Nigerian or pan-African business. So there are multiple areas. And then the last but not the least is a sale to a local Nigerian, or indeed a sale to another company coming into Nigeria. You saw, for instance, Dangote has finally succeeded in selling his flour mills business, I recall, to Ola. So there are multiple windows for exit. I wouldn't worry too much about the exit so long as you set the business right and it's making a profit. If, however, you're unfortunate and you get hit by environmental issues, let me give you an example. A client of ours set up a beautiful fruit processing company in Kaduna. They set it up on 3,000 hectares of beautiful farmland, and the production started about 3-4 years ago. It worked beautifully until the insecurity in that part of Nigeria became more rampant with kidnappings and killings, that their technical partners just said, look, this is enough, we can't hack it anymore. And the farm is located in that terrible axis between Abuja and Kaduna. So they effectively left, and there's no one to run the business. Although they have a Nigerian family that they co-investor with them, it's becoming just too difficult to get investors to look at that upside. So those are some areas where you have issues that are sort of beyond your control. And until we address, I think the government addresses issues of poverty, education, we will never be able to solve the insecurity challenges. And there's a big circle around that.
Thank you. We've got two heads nodding here. First Mark and then Nina on what you were saying.
Yes, I think when we talk about investments and how to attract investments, how to structure them, I think it is important to mention that I think it needs two for tango. I think before Nigerians and Nigeria can ask for more investment into the country, I think it is important that Nigerians themselves invest in Nigeria. And by showing the confidence and giving foreigners the confidence that this is a relevant, attractive investment destination. If you think of that 4% of GDP, $28 billion per year are remittances from outside the country into Nigeria. You get a sense of how much money by Nigerian owners is lying outside the country. And we know, since we have been on ground for quite a while, we know that billions and billions of dollars in Nigerian hands are waiting to be invested. So I think, number one, I would like to encourage my Nigerian friends and partners to invest, and then foreigners will come and partner. And I think that's the signal that foreign partners need before foreigners invest. Why would they invest if Nigerians would not invest? And my colleague in Lagos mentioned some of the challenges. We talked about it already, about the image, the stigma, and yes, we have to be honest here. Parts of the country face security challenges. Not Lagos, not Abuja, but yes, there are other destinations which are more troublesome, and it is affecting specifically agriculture and food processing, let's face it. And last but not least, I would like to comment on one of the earlier mentioned statements regarding agriculture and mechanization. Let us not do the mistake of mechanize agriculture too speedily, because we need to find jobs for millions and millions of Nigerians. If you mechanize, you will not create the jobs that this young population needs. I mean, every year 4 million Nigerians net in addition to the 200 million, so it will be the third largest country in one generation. And when I hear 20 million new jobs are needed across Africa, I think this number is underestimating the real demand only for Nigeria.
Nina, you were...
I can't remember exactly which bit I was nodding at, but I think there was one point that I did want to pick up on, which was when you were pointing to sort of the socially responsible investment, and that's really something you have to have in mind, and it's key. Now, so again, different investors will say you are at a disadvantage because you will come with these requirements, and that maybe other international investors might not place the same importance. Well, this is something that, in part, and I know there may be the bad guys in the room, that I've learned from my days, working in the oil and gas industry, is that you have to engage with your local community. And I'm not just talking about the local partnerships, but having a proper plan in place for sustainable development, giving back into the community, will be a key part of managing some of those on-the-ground risks as well. I think one other point, and maybe a plug for the lawyers, but that's what I am, so I'll do it, is we talked about uncertain regulatory processes, and apologies, I didn't write down the acronym, but it was brilliant.
VUCA.
But don't confuse that with a disrespect of the law. I mean, Nigeria, more than a number of other jurisdictions, but this is true throughout Africa, is do not sign a contract and put it in a drawer and think no one will look at it. You know, Nigeria has an abundance of incredibly smart, qualified lawyers, and you know, the rule of law is an important issue, and your contract is an important issue. And sometimes I have more naive investors that think, oh, well, I can just draft up 2 pages and it'll be fine. You know, this is a jurisdiction where people will go to court. It's a fairly litigious environment, and it's not the easiest environment to be before the domestic courts. But in a plug for the lawyers, but also I think important for you each to have in mind is, we used to say, before you dig the land, dig the law. But you know, people will treat your contracts with real seriousness, and it's important what you commit to do because someone will hold you to it.
Thank you, Nina. I was thinking we need to wrap up in a second. I was going to ask you all about PPPs. There's a German program for PPPs. There's a lot of talk in Nigeria now about PPPs. But I'm going to rephrase that, or reframe it rather. Tomorrow is a big day for some of us because tomorrow is the inauguration day of the new president, or rather the old president who gets into his second term. And in light of the idea of public-private partnerships, and I'd like to start with you, Mrs. Essien, what are your expectations for the next term of government? What do you think are the 3 main criteria that need to be tackled?
Thank you for the question. When you queued up the PPP space, we do think it's quite important I think when we look at the PPP space from our perspective, now speaking as the World Bank Group, what we've seen is that the issue is, I mean, there's definitely some overlap around the different agencies that are supposed to be focused on the PPP space. So there's room for clarity there. That would be very helpful, and it needs to happen at the highest level of government. But I think the real issue is this question of sanctity of contract. And so in order to attract more long-term, chunky infrastructure investment in Nigeria, we need to see that big projects that run into trouble, as they often do, that there is that commitment to go through the process to resolve it without moving away from those original terms. So, right, you're right. Nigeria is quite a litigious environment, but still, that sense that government is going to live up to its commitments, is really, really important. Regardless of whether or not it was the last administration that signed on the dotted line, that level of commitment is really important. So that's one thing that we'd like to see much more of, because the signaling there is huge. Once you get that right, then you have a lot of long-term investors who are willing to put significant amounts of capital in Nigeria. So that, I think, is critical. I already mentioned the power sector. There's been a lot of work done with the various agencies here to put together a reform agenda for the power sector. We'd like to see that cross the finish line. There are, it's a massive challenge. I do understand why there's some concern around moving ahead with that agenda, but that is critical. We need to see some progress there. If not, then we'll have a situation where the power sector will evolve and it'll be much more off-grid, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you won't have the significant amounts of capital come into this economy that we think are really important. I think those 2 things will be very critical. Maybe a third item, if I may as well. I think what we've heard, recently is that the president he's been accused of being very slow in terms of his reform agenda, and we've heard recently that he is going to kind of accelerate in this new administration. So I think we're all anxious to see that. Now we have more alignment between the legislature and the executive arm of government. So we expect now that there's going to be more momentum. I would love to see the kind of urgency that I was talking about. We need to see that, and that has been, I think, the challenge, that we haven't seen enough of that urgency. But certainly, the environment is now, I think, conducive for moving ahead with certain reforms. I don't expect it to be the petroleum industry bill. Maybe they'll pick at that a little bit, but I don't expect that one to happen in this administration. But there's certainly some other things that can happen as well now that that momentum is there. I just want to remind this group that in 2016, there was a partial removal of the fuel subsidy, right?
Yes.
And everybody thought that this was going to, there's going to be hue and cry and Nigerians are going to take to the street. Well, that was a moment when there was so much strong political will for this new government, right? Everybody was willing to kind of swallow the difficult pill and move the economy forward together. So we know that things like that can happen. They're challenging. The average Nigerian felt that in his or her pocket immediately, but they were able to move that ahead. They didn't remove it fully, and so it's still a massive challenge. But we see that they can create the political space to do these things if they do it early enough. And I think that's the critical thing. In the early days of this administration, that's when they have the space to actually move ahead with certain reforms. The space is, I think, more narrow now because this government came in with a weaker mandate, lower voter turnout, etc. But still, that space is still there. That window of opportunity is still there to push forward very early in this administration on key things. And I think the Nigerian electorate will be willing to kind of go the distance, but it must be done early. And not, as we saw last time, waiting to late in the game and it's not happening. So I'm optimistic that early in the first year or so of this administration, if they really push, certain things can happen, and that will build momentum for other things as we go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Nuru?
Let me just add, I totally agree with what she has said, but I think that we will see a lot of movement with some states. I think there's a gradual change in the way things are happening. Nigeria is a very complex, diverse country, of course. But I think in some states, we see a very strong commitment to actually bring in investment on these kind of models. And I think those states are fairly good examples. Those states recognize the gap in certain infrastructure platforms and the opportunity, and they want to harness an opportunity using private sector investment and some kind of partnerships. And I think there are some good examples of states that have led those initiatives quite well. So I expect that those states will keep on pushing that agenda, and they will form very good examples for other states to follow. And what it does is two things. One, people see the outcomes, what kind of outcomes, and it creates influence on other states also to change. And so the pressure on the federal level begins to build up. You say, it's been done in this state, I want to do it in my own state. So it's also a bit easier to negotiate some, I would say, agreements with the federal if you're a strong state. And I think those kinds of things begin to happen. And I think that's what I expect will happen next, a couple of months.
I agree completely.
From my view, my wish list of what I would like the new president, who is the old president, to do is to tackle the oil and gas issue, because it comes to us from both ends. If you look at the trajectory of foreign direct investment in Nigeria over the last 5 years, it's been on a decline. I think last year we managed to attract only $1.2 billion in foreign direct investment. We still see a lot of money coming in foreign portfolio investment, but they just come in to take advantage of our very high yields. MPR is at 13.5%, and with some of the structures the central bank has put in, investors can come in, put dollars here, guaranteed with buying a swap for a year and earn at least 10% in dollar terms at the end of a year or 3 if they want to stay that long. But if you can tackle the oil and gas sector, it achieves two things. First, we can begin to attract investment in the core area, which is representing our 90% of government foreign exchange income and most of our available cash. And secondly, particularly on the downstream side, if you take out the subsidy, you free up more cash to spend on the needed sectors in the economy. And thirdly, if you're able to do that, you take out, I would say, 80% of the corruption incidents in Nigeria. That's the big elephant in the room when you're dealing with government and dealing with Nigeria. It's not spoken, but it's there. You brought in what is a no-brainer, fantastic investment opportunity into the country, and someone tells you, you need to go and put aside X amount of money to my account or give it to XYZ, otherwise it's not happening. And those things are big stumbling blocks. I can't tell you how many clients have been so frustrated, and I simply said, I'm sorry, sir, there's just no way around it. If you're investing in something that requires you to put down $500 million in the economy and somebody's asking you for 10% of the money up front, that you with all the risks around, you'll be insane even to even contemplate such a thing, even if it was a fee. And that's just the irony. If the person was asking for a 10% equity stake, you could find a way to structure it, but they want 10% cash up front. So corruption incidents and oil and gas are the big, sort of chains around the neck of Nigeria in terms of progress. It continues to divert the attention of government from focusing on the real capital of Nigeria, which is our human resources. And until we can focus on human resources and move and begin to train our children and make sure they are healthy, then we will actually have the capital to survive Nigeria of the future. Otherwise, I see no hope in sight in the near term.
Mark.
Well, from an investor's perspective and foreigner perspective, I think uncertainty is poisonous. So for us, the second term offers a chance with respect to continuity, consistency. We know who we are dealing with. In a Nigerian environment, that's a plus. On the other hand, since we know who we are dealing with, and the Nigerian president has a couple of nicknames, which I'm not entitled to mention here, but fact is, yes, the progress has been slow for a while. And the key task will be how to unleash the potential of Nigeria, the economic potential. And there's one perspective that we are looking at, which is that during the second term, Mr. President might not be bound to count on political appointees. He might choose more of a technocrat type of cabinet. We will know within the next days, if not tomorrow already. We are hoping that people will be put on seat that are able to deliver, because we do not want to see another 4 years of sluggish growth. And in addition to that, I think Nigeria definitely has to work on reducing the risks for foreigners to operate in an environment, to understand that, yes, it's the largest economy, yes, it's the largest population, yes, you might want to be G20, G21, but still you have to make yourself attractive. Yeah? It's a globalized economy against all odds, and therefore we ask our Nigerian partners continue the progression that we have been seeing. I think the direction is correct, only the speed is not fast enough. But on the other hand, the positive thing is we Germans are there to stay. We are not leaving just because of a little crisis. No German company left during the 2015-16 crisis. And I think that shows the commitment. And so we are optimistic, and we are optimists by profession. Otherwise, you cannot operate in such an environment. Thank you.
Nina, any thoughts?
I think largely been said already. One of the ones that I'd really like to see working on is on the procurement processes. So we have to find the deals, and the deals are there, and we have these very long, drawn-out procurement processes where the underlying documentation is very slow in coming through. So that is on my wish list.
Mrs. Leibach, any thoughts from your experience?
Running out of steam here. I mean, the last one. But maybe I can comment a bit on the on that token on the German-Nigerian relations and government relations. Yeah, because I think it is from, if you take the German perspective, I'm glad, and I think it's good that Africa and Nigeria has become pretty high as a priority on the political agenda, because that is new, and it shows really the interest of the German government and the German political side. That in itself doesn't create yet new businesses, but I think it is very important that there is an understanding that there is a relationship on government side, sometimes personal relationships among politicians, really to create an environment where there is more interest than from German businesses in Nigeria, because I think we all wonder why not more German companies go to Africa or to Nigeria. And certainly we're all talking about challenges and risk and so on and so forth. But a lot of it is true too that German corporates have a lot of opportunities to invest in the EU or in Asia, anywhere else. Yeah? And so in that sense, Africa is a bit an undiscovered market. And I think it is very important from the political side, as just described, as we as institutions and as business community, to create interest, to give more information, transparency, what's really going on. Because I think, having said what I just said, I think leaving Africa or not putting it on your map as a corporate might be a pretty not so wise strategy either. And I think all that together might help to create that. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to take up the last thing that comes to my mind, and that is I hope that the exchange rate doesn't change again, because last time round it destroyed the power sector that Mrs. Etienne has all the problems with. So let us hope that stays stable. One thing that actually is starting to do what you're talking about, Ms. Leibach, is us here today. This is the first time we've had a live stream like that, thanks to IFC, very kind. It's brought the two cities closer together. I'm one of the champions of our 400 Minutes initiative here in Frankfurt to twin Frankfurt and Lagos. 400 minutes isn't that far. It's the same as Tehran, even if there are political difficulties there now as well. But never mind. Bringing the two cities together means not just bringing them together for corporates, it means bringing them together for education, for culture, and whatever. And that creates a spirit in which people start to just interact at the level of their normal lives. And we all get to know each other a bit more. That is real exchange, not the exchange rate, it's the exchange between people. Before I wrap up, since it is a unique opportunity, I'll take one question from the floor. Who wants to be the lucky one? His hand was up first.
Thank you. My name is Lavri Labi. I am here for Mudet Analytics Institute. In your introduction, you mentioned three main problems for investment in Africa. Political instability, lack of skills, and finance. And I want to say something related to lack of skills. There's a good example with Jumia.
No statements, question,
No,
please.
it's not a statement. I want to say something and ask my question. So, I want to mention the example of Jumia, which has been shown in the media as the first tech and African tech enterprise going to the New York Stock Exchange. And we have noticed that she's called first African tech enterprise to go to the New York Stock Exchange, but the development is owned by a German enterprise and several other entities in Europe, and the developers are sitting in Portugal, not in Africa. So Mudet Analytics is an enterprise promoting machine learning in Africa and from the diaspora. So we are going to have next training in Nigeria. We have got support from the GIZ. We wanted to ask you what kind of measures do you have in Germany, both in Germany and in Nigeria, to support diaspora in knowledge transfer from north to south?
Good question. Mark, would you like to take it? Knowledge transfer north to south, what measures are there to support it?
I think both from the German government and the private sector, there have been a couple of initiatives with reference to specifically technical vocational education and training in Nigeria. You refer to Nigeria, if I'm correct. So GIZ, German Manufacturers Association, VDMA, collaborating, by the way, with Dangote in Obajana at the large cement plant in Kogi State. We have been running a vocational training scheme for 6 years, which will be now upgraded and upscaled by GIZ. So there's a huge push from the German side into developing skills in Nigeria for the simple fact, we'd also talk about corporate social responsibility and development collaboration, but we have very sincere egoistic interests, which is, I talked about the typical setup in Nigeria of a German SME. We need skilled labor in order to service our products, because otherwise German products which were purchased for high price stand idle in all these, for example, food processing industries. So we have both a public and a private interest to develop skills in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa, and most German institutions, if not all, are supporting that push.
Thank you. So, your question.
Thanks. It seems like I still got the opportunity. Thank you very much. Well, I've never been to Nigeria, and our organization doesn't have any work there, so I'm basically learning from this session. But I get the impression that the private sector, the business sector, is extremely dynamic, and it's really hustling through in spite of all odds, in spite of a government who's probably been cushioned by huge oil revenues for a long time, hasn't needed to really rely on taxes from the private sector, hasn't really needed to rely on that the private sector will grow the economy. And therefore, with the background I heard from, I think it was Mr. Ike Choki, about that the growth prospects are not looking so good. The economic growth rate has been declining. I think Madame Essien mentioned that there would be actually real per capita negative growth rates in coming years. So it doesn't look good. So what is really puzzling me, and of course this will have to do with the political economy in the country, and I kind of deduce from all that's been said that it must be an incredibly complex political economy situation, but given that you have a very dynamic, hustling private sector who is working so hard and managing in spite of all odds, do they try to organize themselves politically in like industry organizations, employers organizations, chambers of commerce, and trying to really move the needle on the policies? It just surprises me that this is going on and on and on, and needed reforms that would really help lifting the economy.
The private sector organizes itself politically.
Ike, would you like to take that? You are very vociferous on this issue anyway.
Not politically, but just as advocates.
I think the private sector is already taking it serious and has begun to do a lot of advocacy. And by supporting candidates with a private sector orientation to get into government. I can say for one that AfriInvest is actually a leader in that space. My former chairman and partner, Godwin Obaseki, has been my business partner since 1994. We then launched him off into politics in 2016, and he's the governor of Edo State. And I'm glad to say that Edo State is one of the more reforming state governments. Now, he's a minority in the sea of 36 governors, but we hope to get some more. And I think among the new entrants, there are at least about 3 or 4 very progressive type-looking governors that are being sworn in tomorrow. We need to do more of that, clearly, particularly at National Assembly and also at the federal level, presidential election level. We have not been fortunate, given the quality of candidates that have sort of risen through the political ranks, to be able to see people. Of course, in the last election, there were a bunch of people that are brand new into politics that ran for presidency, but they couldn't have won an election in their own polling station. So that doesn't help. You need someone who has more visibility and more sort of... you've got to be in politics to win. It's just no easy way out. So the private sector is indeed taking it very seriously, and are beginning to advocate and get support of other companies quietly, because you don't want to be too open, otherwise the government will create a rule against you and shut down your business. That has happened in the past.
So can I offer, it's a great question, I'm really glad you asked it, because I actually think that there's so much more the private sector could be doing, and you made this point, Ike, before, when you said that, you know, the way you do things in Nigeria is you have these one-on-one conversations, right?
Yes.
That's how things move ahead. I negotiate directly with you, and you help me solve my problem. Ultimately, that benefits those two parties, and then the broader ecosystem may not benefit. I think there is huge potential for the private sector to come together in a more cohesive way, agnostic around political agenda. And we all know that politics in Nigeria is, us versus them. That's what it means. There's no real political ideology that drives policy, although that's changing to some degree. But I do think there's a lot more. In fact, there's a group that's starting to think about what that could look like. Private sector advocacy that has no political agenda, where you come together and you advocate for a set of issues that is common across the group, rather than me going and having this conversation with this person and they resolve my issue, but it doesn't resolve the issue for the other stakeholders who have the same problem. So I think there's a lot more, and that's similar to the fact that I think in Nigeria, civil society, the voice of civil society, is not where it should be. We should see much more advocacy coming from civil society in general. In Nigeria, the voice of civil society has been captured in many ways, right? So there's a lot more that can be done in this way. I'm hoping that we're on the cusp of something that could actually really drive private sector advocacy, so that you really do see entities come together and really advance critical points of dialogue. But I do think that the room there's a lot of space there. And this one-on-one bilateral thing, frankly, that's not how you move a big economy forward. You can't have thousands of one-on-one negotiations for each and every institution. It's just not going to work. And so until we break past that, I think we're not going to really see the private sector play the role it should be playing to move government. So in other countries, we see that happening. The private sector comes together and collectively moves government to a certain policy perspective. That can happen here, but it's still early days of that, I would say.
Thank you, Mrs. Essien. I mean, it bears pointing out that Nigeria is unique in that the center of business is more or less exactly where you're sitting in Ikoyi, and the center of politics is a completely different city, which means that bringing the two together is structurally already difficult. But I do think we have to wrap up now. Mr. Maleki, you were indicating that?
I wanted to thank the panel in Lagos and also the panel here in Frankfurt. My thanks goes especially to Emi Essien. And we thank you so much that we could be at your office. It's a little bit pity that we had not enough time that we could invite more guests in Lagos, but the decision to do this satellite and internet link to Lagos was very, very late. One of the reasons I was looking for sponsors who's willing to finance it. And now it's for me very important that I thank the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. A big applause. Without their help, it would not be possible. Okay. And this kind gentleman, is he sitting there? Thank you very much. I think because you see, we are doing conferences like this very often. But we have to prove it that it is realistic, and you don't have to fly. You can do it easily in that way. And as you may know, that there's a conference also in November here in Frankfurt, where all the presidents of the states of the Compact with Africa are coming to Frankfurt. And what we are offering is why don't we do a conference in the 10 countries on the same day, and everything is realistic. And we as the Maleki Group are doing it already more than 20 years, with the technology of 20 years ago. So thank you to everybody. I think it was a very interesting second day. It's for me very important that everybody has an invitation for the reception at the Remote for this evening. So because we are going to celebrate the first Africa Europe Award. So if you don't have a special card, please ask for it. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too late for my friends from Lagos, but maybe next time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.